I open my eyes and I look on the floor and I see this pendant just sitting between my feet. And she picks it up and she brings it and she shows me, and it's Mary Magdalene. And I'm like, no. Hey.
Wow.
The next day we held another workshop in Newcastle from Sydney. The lady on the microphone shares to me, and she said, oh, Mary Magdalene came to me. And I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous. I'm thinking, so I've heard it Thursday, Saturday like that, and then Sunday. And then I have my energy with Sarah on Tuesday. She said, I feel I need to draw a card for you when you leave, and I'll text it to you. She texted me the card that she drew, Mary Magdalene. The episode you're about to watch has been republished. My podcast channel reaches a lot more people now, and there's certain episodes that have slipped under the radar, and I wanted to bring them up for your attention because I truly feel they are worth listening to. So please be sure to let me know what you think of this episode in the comments below. And of course, let's continue to connect. Let me know where you are in the world and where you're listening and tuning in from. I love reading it. It's amazing, isn't it, that we can do this? And the other thing I want to say as well is find out where we are if you want to put your spiritual boots on and come and join us at one of our 5-day retreats or one-day events around the world. Links are below as well if you want to find out more what we're up to. Much love from me. Enjoy. Heather, welcome back to the podcast.
It's a joy to be here again, Guy. Thanks for having me back.
You're very welcome. The success of the first episode, which was released quite a number of months ago now, I think surprised us all. And there's clearly a hunger and a thirst for people to explore the Akashic records. And I feel that's where, well, maybe the podcast listeners are at, or where the world is at. I don't know. I probably see these things through biased lens anyway. So we wanted to invite you back onto the show to start to have a deeper discussion around certain questions that I had as well from after having a reading with you. And starting to explore that more, because when you first came on the podcast, Heather, that was my first experience really of looking at the Akashic records. I kind of had a rough idea of what it was, but that was it. So I always feel like I'm a student, and to be able to invite you back on and have a reading from you and explore is always great. I don't know what it was like from your end from that first podcast.
Well, I think I don't speak about this too much, but I think what I enjoy most about the work that I do is that I do get to be the student, even while I'm in the seat of the teacher or the facilitator. So even when I'm offering an Akashic session, there's so many times when new information that's coming through someone's records, it's new to me for the first time as well, because I haven't perceived what's coming through in this way before. So I love that I get to be this perpetual student by having the honor of being in someone else's records. It's so much fun. Yeah.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And I will say to people listening to this as well, this is a standalone episode, the style will be slightly different today, because I feel it will be more conversational style, where the first podcast we did was me basically interrogating you for an hour and finding out all about your journey, which I feel resonated with myself deeply, but also everyone that listened to as well. So I encourage people to go back and listen to that. That will complement this one. And we will cover a little bit of ground just to lead into from what come up of my session and what people can expect as well. But how would you briefly describe the Akashic records for anyone new? Like, what would be the elevator pitch? That would be the first thing I want to ask. And then I got a follow-up question from that.
Yeah, so the Akashic records as they stand alone is basically a timeline of your soul's history, past, present, and future. And everything that holds a consciousness has an Akashic record. So whether we're talking about living entities like humans and animals and plants, or even things that we don't normally consider, such as businesses, or you can go into the Akashic records of a house, or even land clearings, even though that's connected to the earth, which is living. You can go into planets. Anything that holds a vibrational frequency of consciousness has an Akashic record connected to it. But the bigger field of the Akasha is sort of like the overarching umbrella of all that is. So we call this the quantum. It includes, right, the sun, the moon, all the stars, everything that exists in this planet and everything in the universe, in as above, so below, as within, so without. That's the Akasha. And it translates to space or spirit. So it's very broad. It's almost daunting to consider. And then even when you pare it down into your own Akashic record, when you start to think that every single action, thought, or deed that you have has a vibrational frequency that is, in a sense, recorded into the quantum field, that also starts to get very daunting, because you can start to expand your thinking into parallel universes that you might be experiencing. You can go into, decisions and choices that you said yes to or no to, but all of that's recorded. And that's just in this lifetime. So then if you add all the other lifetimes before, if you're open to it, it's a pretty thick book.
It's wild. You've already sparked about 4 questions that's going off on a complete tangent. But the first one that you mentioned, like, people ponder, well, how can the past, present, and future records be available to us if we haven't experienced our future yet or lived it?
So how I understand it is that the future holds the potential. So it's when someone comes to me and they're doing an Akashic reading and they're asking a question about something in the future, what I do share with them is, listen, the future is not written and it's filled with potential possibilities. But what usually will come through is what potential holds the most potency. What potential line has the most energy magnetizing towards it. So that's the one that I will share. And sometimes it's 2 or 3, and sometimes it's 1. And then I just reconfirm, but you're still sovereign. You have choice. And the moment that you shift your attention in another direction, that's where the energy is going to start to flow. So it gives people options to ponder, but we're never locked into this is it and there's no way to avoid it.
Got you. Perfect. Because I think I heard the word probability in terms from a guest once. I think it was Tom Campbell, but spoke about that there's a probability, and as we draw our attention to it, the probability and likelihood of that occurrence happening for that particular timeline is going to become more probable, but it's not definite.
I love that word. Yeah, that's a great word to replace with, possibility, probability. Yeah. So what is most probable in this moment? And then I will cue someone and let them know, like, because I give them the recording at the end of the session. So if, for example, from the reading that you and I had, Guy, if you were making a decision, say 6 months later, based off something we talked about in our Akashic session, if you went back and listened to the recording and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that, I'm going to act on that now. It's recommended to go back into the records and see if that is still the best course of action, because it's delivered in the present moment. And so present moment is shifting all the time.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty neat.
It is neat.
The other thing that you mentioned before, which I just want to bring up to the start for people as well, is how long have people been accessing these records for, or have we known there's been an availability? Because you touched on the fact that they are becoming more accessible, and I want to explore that, what you mentioned after I had that reading as well.
Yeah, so that part is so this is fun too. So certain people are called to work with the Akashic records to read the Akashic records of the Akashic records. So when I'm sharing with you that the Akashic records was shut down in history for a period of, I don't know how many years, say 500 or 1,000 years, the Akashic records was shut down because what has been shared with me by my teachers is that it was being abused and it was being mistreated. So the access to the records was shut down. And only in recent history has it been reopened again. Now, did I personally receive that in the records? No, because how I work with the records is very personal, working with people, and I work with the Akashic records with individuals. So that is information, and you can see it in some of these different, like Edgar Cayce books and different books that are written on the Akashic records. They'll talk about this. So that's information that I've received, that I'm sharing and passing along with you, but it's not something that I've directly probed on and asked about in the records themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. So just my logical brain, who would be denying us access? The field itself? Are there?
Well, here's the piece that I see when I start to play with people is, so if in our human history, we have outsourced our access to consciousness, whether it's internally or externally, whether we want to be internally accessing God, and if that word's triggering, use a different one, or externally praying to God. We've outsourced it to spiritual leaders because that's what we were taught to do. We were so busy and focused on our survival mechanisms of food, shelter, and warmth that we outsourced our spiritual side because there just isn't enough time in a day to do it all, right? So we take very good care of our monks and our priests and our priestesses by providing all of their basic needs so that they can spend hours and hours on end communicating and connecting with consciousness. Now, fast forward to present time, our basic survival skills for most people are taken care of. So we have more freedom to be able to spend time contemplating and meditating with the Akashic field. Now, totally guaranteed, we are distracted by 1,000 different things that we do other than that, but the option is there now for us to play with. And so because of that, the accessibility is more granted, I think, also because we understand on a deeper level how to get into the frequency than we did before.
There's a deeper level of knowledge available to us now.
There's a deeper level of knowledge. And one of the things like that I'm just starting to talk about a little bit that I personally get slightly irritated with, when you look at any like how to Akashic record book, it's constantly relayed in writing. This is so simple. Anyone can do it. All you have to do is A, B, C, or D. And that is true. But when we start to layer in our doubts, our fears, and our belief systems, the ability for us to access becomes challenging for some, not all. Some people that I work with the records, they're already in the energetic realm, and all we're doing is extending the olive branch into the direction of the Akashic records. For others, they have such a yearning, and that's what pulls them in. And it's so beautiful to witness this because very few people actually act on their yearnings. So anytime I get to see it, it just like lights me up like a Christmas tree because it's so necessary for our soul's fulfillment in this lifetime, is to act on our yearnings and our desires and our wants. So that's the key in. But then once they're in the training, there's so much that we're doing together to help to lower the part of them that wants to believe that they can't do it, and how to amplify the part of them that actually signed up because they want to grow and expand. And what I'll say to people is like, when you come into this training, that part of you that wants to sit in doubt and fear, it gets to be here. That's totally a part of your makeup. Absolutely. But I can't speak to it because I will never be able to win the argument against it. It will always have an excuse, a reason, a but to put in there that I can't argue with. So when we come into community together, my simple request is that you are leading forward with the part of you that wants to grow and expand. And that's who I get to talk to in our time together. And then when we agree to do that, it's really beautiful to see how people unfold and are able to read the records with ease.
Wow. That was so beautifully said. I'm going to pinch that line, what you just said as well at our one-day workshops, because you just nailed it right there. It's almost like the intention, the desire, the want to go beyond our limitations allows us to take that step forward. And we all come up against them at some stage, but there has to be a point where we take that step, where we lean into that and acknowledge the fear, but lean into what wants to come forward, which I always feel is from my heart, and not my mind, which goes beyond the condition, which knows no boundaries. And if we nurture that aspect, then We could become our own divine creators, that we are all of that potential to be, but we just don't allow ourselves it.
Yeah, it's like you're going to notice that your wife hasn't had her baby yet, has she?
No.
Okay, so there's this neat thing that happens when you have child number 2. When you have child number 1, it's like you think of how much love you have for your partner, and then you have this baby, and your heart just expands to this bigger than what you thought was possible space. And then you hang out and you resonate there with your child. And then when you have your second one, it's like, I did not even know that there was more room that could grow in my heart to let space in for this other being that now wants to hang out and resonate with me. And what you're talking about, like the limitlessness of the heart space, is so fascinating. And when we think of the limitlessness of the mind, like how we're taught that we use maybe, I don't know, 10% of our brain, and the rest of it we're actually not even accessing. So the heart is more vast than even the vastness of the brain. So when you get to access that with someone and hang out with it, it's like, absolutely, this part of you that's in resistance, she or he gets to be here. But you know what? You've given them your time and attention for 30 plus years. Put them in the back seat. Let them play with their Legos. Let your sovereign self ride shotgun for a bit. Let them hang out with you. Let them tell you what they're hungry for, and see what it's like to just be with them for a bit. And that's who we hang out with. And then what happens is then the group space, it up levels because everyone's bringing their highest self forward. So then it creates this beautiful, potent energy to play with all day.
Yeah, so you're sitting in the group energy then itself, right? And because you'll be running a training in, is it January?
Yeah.
Yes, January 2024. I can't believe we're nearly at the end of 2023. My brain is definitely in babyland as well. So from that, then you spoke about there's different ways of receiving the Akashic reading, because I'm guessing obviously we have to get into ourselves into a space to connect with intention. Obviously there's free will involved here, so if there's the free will of connecting to my own Akashic record, or free will is granted from somebody that you're working with as you train to learn this, what are the different ways of interpretation, and how do we figure that out as humans, because we tend to receive information differently?
Yeah, so I bet you different teachers use different techniques, but when I was called to teach others how to access the Akashic records, and I was asking the how of it, what came through for me was to work with Clair abilities. So the 4 main Clairs that we have are Claircognizant, which is your inner knowing, Clairsentient, which is your feelings, Clairvoyant, which is your inner seeing, and Clairaudio, which is the hearing. There's also Clairgustance, which is taste, and Clairliance, which is smell. But I find whenever I'm sort of going, what I do before anyone comes into a training, I set up a one-on-one session with them, and we go through their clairs. So how I do it is I do an energetic body scan. I'll start at the crown of your head, and I did this in our session together. So maybe you can respond to it a bit to how it felt when I was pinging it to you. But from the crown of the head, we start to do an energetic body scan downwards. And I'm going through, okay, claircognizance, what's coming through? Is this person receiving through claircognizance? And if I get a yes, then I'm also getting information on the how, because people actually access the Clair a little bit differently from one another. And I make notes on this, and I will sort of put like an order of first to third as to what is the strongest Clair, and then what's beneath it and what's beneath that. And sometimes Clairs work in partnership together. That's another thing to keep in mind. What's kind of tricky is that when you go into an Akashic training, or when I go into the Akashic training itself, because there's sort of the group pull that will support sort of an upgrade energetically in people, sometimes another Clair ability will pop and become more predominant in the training than the one that was sort of outlined before we started. So it's kind of a guideline, but it's not an absolute, if you will. And then when I'm working, if someone's having trouble with an exercise that we're doing, I will look and see, okay, this person is clairsentient. So I'm going to be asking them, like, what is it that you're feeling when you're asking that question? What does it feel like to be in this person's records? Where do you feel that kinesthetically? Is it in your fingertips? Is it a whole body? And so by them, then they're like, oh, this is so natural to me. So they respond in their sort of natural tongue, their native tongue, if you will, through their clairability. But if someone's clairvoyant and I'm asking them how they're feeling, they're going to get confused because they're going to be like, I'm not really feeling anything. And then they think that they can't do it. And that's not true. It's just that I'm not accessing from the telephone line that's most predominant within them. So then I'll be asking them, okay, are you getting any pictures, any visuals? Does it come in sharp and quick and you lose it right away? Or does it sort of like a painting that's slowly being painted in as you linger in the field? So there's different ways that we play with it that way.
Yeah. Okay. So it's almost like there's what I find when working in groups is that there's a level of awareness that gets heightened to then have an experience because of the group, the lift of the group energy. But then we have a new reference point that we kind of know what we're then looking for because we've actually experienced it in the lift. That's how I've sort of found my way through in time by being in groups. And that's why I'm so passionate about holding groups together myself with the work we do. And then from that, when I'm actually out of that group and I'm in my own little space with the practice, there's a reference point that I can develop that muscle to develop the awareness to access it, not from the head, if that makes sense. That's what I found on my journey.
So can you give me, just so that I can be sure that I'm following along, can you give me an example of how that is in the group space? Like what would be happening in the moment that you're feeling and sensing and then expanding into?
Oh, now you're opening up. Yeah. Well, more lately it's been from working with divine source energy. So there's a level of energy that starts to come through, and from that level of energy within the group, I can feel my torus field. I can feel the expansion. So it's like I'm in my body and beyond my body, and that alone of that sense and being able to, and I feel there's been a relationship with my physical body muscle for it to become comfortable enough to go, it's safe, it's okay, when it comes up against its limitations, to settle in. So through being through that group, feeling into the group energy, distinguishing boundaries between my energy and the group's, it's that has been a development for myself, and I can sense it and I'm in it. So even then, when I'm in my everyday life, I tend to hold that resonance, providing I keep the practices at a much more conscious level, and my boundaries become very clear and set within my world as I go around, and that becomes much more conscious. But then it becomes a habit at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's really nice the way you shared the description of it. It's almost like you can recall it not on demand, but almost in the moment, because you have an energetic imprint of it. So you know what it feels like, you know how it landed in that moment in the group space, and then you recall it to come in and kick in. The same way, like if you isolate the hamstring when you're at the gym, and then you're trying to make your hamstring come online when you're running, you can feel into the muscle memory of what it feels like to flex that hamstring and ask it to kick in, right?
Exactly. And it becomes a spontaneous thing. And what's been really neat, and I'm slowly starting to talk about it more on a podcast, but I haven't, is that then through when you hold a really pure intention for a group or an energy, that energy wants to flow more and more within and merge with the group collective energy. And I always see it as coherence. So there's a wonderful little YouTube video out there somewhere where you see all these like pendulums just all incoherently ticking, and then eventually they become a coherent group where they're all ticking together. And I always see that in the space I hold, because then that's amplifying the energy even more, that really allows us to get beyond ourselves and starts to reveal the truths that we want to lean into. And within myself then, so once that divine intention of I guess, we're trying to find the right words here, but the raising the vibration for the whole group with the I guess the most honest intentions for everyone to allow themselves to heal aspects of themselves that might have been beyond their awareness, then what is happening is that other non-physical beings, however you want to word it, start to want to support that intent from that. And then you can start to develop your relationship with them and with free will that will then start working with you as a conduit to support the group, which has just been absolutely beautiful and mind-blowing at the same time, and very, almost like a new rabbit hole. It comes from that you continue to explore and learn from. And that's been very interesting as well, because again, it starts turning what might be metaphors or words or labels or belief systems or what is spoken in texts and books for millennia. Once they start to become direct experiences that are within your internal world, nobody can, that's your truth then, and nobody can take that away from you. And as you lean into that and honor that, it just continues to open up, well, what's possible? That like it feels like it's never ending, and just when you think you're like, oh yeah, I'm getting the hang of this, then there's a whole new chapter emerges, and I have no doubt those chapters just continue to move on and move on and move on. And when you're touched in such a way like that, it really does. You can't unknow then what that knowing. And it does something. So for me, it's just made me so, I don't know, grateful for everything that I have. Like, you start to really live for the moments and soak up the life that's happening now, as opposed to the striving, the pushing, and the chasing of something, which we say we don't do, but we inherently do quite a lot of the time. Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah, thank you.
There's a neat when you say when you know and you can't unknow, I oftentimes talk about it in, when you pass through the gate. This is why we have sovereignty. This is why we have free will. Because I call them the frequencies. I mean, people speak of them as archangels and all the rest of it, ascended masters, teachers, guides. But at the end of the day, it's not so much a persona, but a frequency. It's aware that there's consequence to our choice, right? And so some of those consequences are beautiful, like you just described, and some of them can be uncomfortable, right? So as we start to grow and expand in a certain way, we oftentimes outgrow certain friendships or jobs or relationships. And so because there's this understanding that when you pass through the gate, there's no going back. This is why we always get to have this choice and this sovereignty and this ability to say yes or no to it. And what you just described is the beautiful, benign, positive consequence of saying yes, even though we don't know the how. How am I going to be able to hold the capacity for the amount of energy that wants to come in and support this group? Oh, I don't have to. Boom, I got this thing, this frequency that I can lean into. And it now has my back while I have the group's back. And it creates almost like this Russian doll, right? It's neat. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it is beautiful. And just to speak to that point, there's been a huge amount of growth for me in my journey, and still continues the growth, where I've had to sit in that discomfort, where I've had to lean into and let go of the things or people that no longer we're on the not on the same resonance, let's say. It's not what my heart is calling forward. And there's been a lot of shedding and deep sadness and loneliness and places where I've been, but I guess getting to a point where allowing and accepting those things, and that's when the healing of those parts start to come on. And it's a journey, and but I'm certainly grateful for all the wisdoms now, even though I'd hit an eject button at the time when they're happening to get me out of there sometimes when you feel it. But yeah, so from that then, just to explore the reading a little bit more and to support people as well listening, what did you know? And I'm happy for you to talk about aspects of myself with the field. Like, how do you read people? What is your strongest way, Claire, of receiving that information? Yeah, clairability. Yeah.
Claircognizance is my strongest, and Clairsentient is quite close behind. So what happens for me is, I use mantras and different, mantras is how I describe them on when I'm working with the record. So I have an opening mantra to open someone's record. I have a closing mantra, and then I have several mantras that I can use as agencies of support once I'm in there. So the reason why I love mantra is because when we work with mantra, we're not just pulling in our own request to connect to the frequency that we're intending to work with, but we call in the thousands and millions and billions of people before us that have sung the same song. And so it amplifies the access to what it is that we're working with. This is why when you stand in a stadium and you start singing your national anthem, it gets emotional, because it's not just you and all the people around you singing. This anthem has been sung forever, or Amazing Grace, or different, mantras that we use in yoga. These have a frequency that pulls in all the others that have sung it before us. So even when I repeat my mantra, it's different from, say, Linda Howe, who's another Akashic record teacher. But the intention is all the same. I've looked at ones from Australia and ones from Europe and ones that are in Mandarin, and they all have the same intention. Just the words are a little bit different. So it pulls that in. So number one, I use mantra because it just helps me to have a direct line to be able to access someone's records. And when I do training, some people will say, I'm kind of choking on some of the languaging. Can I shake it up a bit and put my own words in? And my response is, while we're in training, I ask that you keep the mantra the same, because it keeps the frequency consistent with everyone. And once you're done training, the tethers are loose, and if you want to adjust it, you can. So that's the first piece, is that I get settled. I do a small tune in. I always do a banishment mantra. It's not always to push out the dark, scary energies that are orbiting, but it also just decreases the scattered energy that we collect throughout our days, right? So this is why we love to shower at the end of a work day, and we like to change our clothes, and we like to really make that transition from work to home, is because we don't want to take on our work life back into our evenings when we're at home with our families. So the same is true when I open up someone's records. I want to make sure that we're not bringing in any straggling energy, any stagnant energy, anything that's just kind of a loafer hanging around. So I banish. I do it with conviction, because that's important. And then I open the records. And when I open the records, there's always a felt sense of someone's frequency. I call it like a GPS or a radio frequency. Everyone has their own frequencies. Meditators will talk about the breath being someone's GPS, right? Everyone breathes slightly different from each other. And so that's your own signature frequency. So there's always a felt sense when I open up someone's record. So I will describe it to them. What I'm feeling is different than how I feel when I'm in my own body. So I'm just languaging it. When I open up your records, I feel a very quick rising up action in my body, which gives me the information that you're currently on an ascension, you're on an uplift, and it's very fast and very quick. Or when I open up your records, it's very gentle, it's very soft, it's very pleasant. It feels almost like a horizon line expanding. So people's records open differently, number one. And how I'm able to describe it is just because I've done this enough that I have the contrast from multiple other people to be able to know that Guy's records feel different than when I open up Cindy's than when I open up John's, right? From there, so that's a little bit of Clairsentient. I'm feeling into their frequency. Then usually after that, there's information that's sitting there, and that comes through Claircognizance for me. So there's information, messages, if you will, but that kind of sometimes can get convoluted. So I just like to say information. It's information that's sitting there that I will just share as it's coming through. And what's fun is that, you know, when you're describing in the group space how you can feel the energy and the hum of the group, and then you're pulling in energies from other frequencies, and it's creating sort of this soup. When I open up someone's records, it's like the reason why this is so fascinating for me. I'm curious by nature. I love to get to know people. And this gives me an opportunity to kind of be inside someone's space and experience it. So wow. If someone's like a really slow talker, I talk slower when I'm in their records. If someone's a really fast talker and they're very intelligent and they move really quickly, I'm oftentimes gasping for air because I'm speaking so fast when I'm in their records. If someone's like clairvoyant, this is how my own clairvoyance has sharpened, by being in other people's records and experiencing a little bit of their records through clairvoyance. So I'm describing what's coming through clairvoyantly, even though that's not my main clair. So it's helping me to curate and cultivate my own clairvoyancy. It's super fun. And then as we start to like dive in, then it starts to get very organic. So I will oftentimes let people know, like when I first open your records, I'll describe it to you. If there's information there, I'll share it with you. And then what eventually happens is it kind of goes quiet. And that's my cue that everything that was just sitting on the cusp and wanted to come through has done so. And now I'm kind of turning it over to the individual, and it's their opportunity to come forward and be like, okay, I booked the session because I'm curious about this. I'm wanting information about that. And they start to ask their questions. And so I let those come in, and I'll let you know that when I first started, I didn't even give space for this guy because I was too self-conscious, or I had too much doubt and fear that if someone asked a question, the answer wouldn't come in. So when I first started readings with people, I wouldn't even give them opportunity to ask questions. What I would do is I would open their records, I'd describe what was there, and then I would do that energetic body scan from the crown of the head downwards. And I would allow that to take the hour, and that would be the time that we would have. And then possibly at the very end, they could sneak a question in or two, but I was too, I just didn't trust that I would be able to actually receive answers to their questions. So now I can, because I've been doing it enough. So they'll ask questions. And what's fun is, this is really interesting for people to learn as well, is that we oftentimes relate silence to disconnection. And what happens for me in the records is when someone asks a question and it's radio silence, I interpret that as a number of different things. One, the question that you're asking is irrelevant. You don't need to know the answer to that at this time. Or is the question being asked clearly? Am I confusing the field by asking maybe 3 questions in one question? So can I ask the question a different way? And third, I will look at just clearing static distortion and interference, just like kind of like putting a cut through what we're doing, and just really almost like the ginger you have after the wasabi when you eat sushi before you have the next piece. It's that little bit, and it just clears it. And then we can ask the question again, and sometimes the answer will come in that way. But for me, radio silence is never like, oh, woe is me, I can't get information to it. And yeah. And when people learn that, they get excited because it just redirects all their past programming of when they've tried to do anything like this in the past and they haven't gotten what they wanted, and they've just assumed that they weren't good enough or weren't like worthy enough to play and dance with the field.
Absolutely. And it's also good practice to articulate what it is you're actually asking, because quite often we're in our head so much that when we try to verbalize something, we can't even find the words because we're still floating amongst all our other feelings and thoughts and everything, and it kind of helps us hone in what it is, which for me then becomes a greater intent behind something, which has more power. Question I had for you then, which I have no doubt will come up because it kind of comes up with what we do as well sometimes, is about taking on other people's energy. Is it concerns about it, things like that, because you're working so intimately really with other people's fields.
Yeah. So my Clairsentience are usually my individuals that have to be very conscientious of their boundaries the most. They're usually like feeling others. So we do have good conversation in the training just about boundaries, how to have boundaries, whether they're energetic, personal, or in relationship. So that conversation comes up. What I recommend when people are doing sessions is that when a session's done, first of all, this is why we have a closing mantra. I can physically feel and sense and know when I've closed someone's records, all of their tethers are going back to them and I'm not holding on anything energetically. What disappoints people a lot is that when I do an Akashic session, the session's not for me, it's for the other. So I don't retain a lot of what comes through in the session. So when people do it over Zoom, I give them the recording and they're great. But I've had people come into my office and I'll say, if you want to voice memo and record the session, you can. And they say, oh, no, it's okay. And then they'll text me afterwards and say, can you give me, the details about A, B, C, or D? And I'm like, I don't have them because it's not mine and I haven't held on to it and I don't actually recall it. And this is why I suggested that maybe you voice memo it when you come in. So I do my very best not to make someone else's information mine.
Yes.
But even in the group space, I do take breaks. Like when we take breaks, I will close all the records when we take breaks so that people get a full rest when we have a break and their records aren't staying open. And then I do find a lot of people pre-training when I'm doing like that private session to just assess their Clair abilities. If someone has boundary work that needs to be cleaned up a little bit before starting, I'll give them some tips on what they can do between that session and the time that we start. Yeah, because it is important. It's a really good point that you're making. And personally, I've had to reduce, like I used to have my schedule set up so I could have up to 4 sessions a day and it's too exhausting for me. So 2 or 3 is my max now. Yeah.
Yeah. We got to have work-life balance. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, like you, I go home and the other job starts. I got 3 little rascals at home and a husband that works out of town a lot. So yeah, it's full on for sure.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I just want to raise this point because I haven't even spoke to you about it yet. And which I just always find this quite mind-blowing and intriguing was with my back. So I don't know if you remember the occurrence of what happened. So just for our listeners, I played rugby from the age of 6 till I was 21. Very physical sport. And from about 15 years old, if I recall, trying to think back, recollecting it, I always struggled with back pain. And it's plagued me my entire life, really. Like I've always been in and out of seeing physio, chiro, I had scans when I was younger, and I just put it down to rugby and things. But as I've explored myself more and more, I've become more and more open to it has to be more than just some physical injury. There is a deep lesson here for myself. And the one thing I kind of been leaning into, interestingly, with my back pain, the more people I started working in front of, because some of the groups have been up to 100 people now in one day, and we do that over 2 days. So 2 different sets of 100. My back pain would increase. So as I was leading into the group energy through the week, and about if you just start tuning into what's coming, there would always be this fragility to the point sometimes I've gotten on the airplane where I can hardly move my back. And Matt would ring me up, who I run the workshops with, going, are you right there, old man? He'd always give me some, can you bend? Are you going to make it? Kind of thing. And it's like, so it's been a real opportunity for me to explore what aspects of myself am I missing, or what am I not seeing here in terms of me holding boundaries, because this has been a weakness. And from the workshops and retreats, I always have an energy healing session. I work with a particular lady. She's amazing. And it's kind of like giving back to myself, where I can just let go and be held. And interestingly, that's developed my awareness. As she's working, I'm working with her, and I'm feeling others coming in and working. It's just quite extraordinary, actually. So those happened. And I had an incident with my back, where there's an experience where I was, and this was before our reading, of slavery, many past lives before. And I had this huge heat happen in my back, and I really had to allow my body to surrender, myself to surrender while it was going on. And it went for 10 minutes, and there felt like something released, which was incredible. But there was still, afterwards and weeks integrating, it still was pulling on me a little bit. And then we had the Akashic record, and at some off-the-cuff moment, I said, oh, what did the Akashic record have to say about my back? And you didn't know any of this. And then your reading took me back to slavery, and to the point where my back was broken, but my will was not broken. And so within that, then there was a holding to that incident of not forgiving the perpetrator. So at some aspect, there was still an energetical bond with that. And through then the mantra and permission, we let that go. Now, I felt really strange for about 3 days after our reading, kind of like, oh, just getting my way back in my body. But my back, since that reading, and then I had one more energy session after the weekend of running workshops, just to explore that, has gone to a new level of freedom that I haven't experienced in quite some time. So I'm staying humble. I'm not taking any of it for granted, because I have no doubt the moment I do, something will gently remind me that I'm in my head, not my heart. So that's what's happened from all that experience. So it's been a real integral piece of my journey. And that's because I'm always open to exploring these things and wanting to learn more, which I want to pass on for everyone listening to this as well. So it's fascinating what can come out of these things if we just explore it.
I am just so happy you shared that experience with me. There's this assumption that because someone does something for so long, they're just 100% like, yeah, I got this, right? And so you reflecting back your previous experience to before I tapped into the slavery, and then the whole side effect afterwards, it just gives me, this is where the role's being flipped here a bit. It allows me permission to trust even more what comes through the records when I'm reading the records. Because even though I've been doing this for as long as I have, the human in me is still there. And she's always wondering, is this too much information? Am I tapping into something that they don't align with spiritually, religiously? Is this information going to be trauma triggering or healing? There's always this little niggle that I have when I'm doing readings that I have to, that's the part of me that I have to put in the back seat and just trust that what's coming through is what's meant to be said, and just to follow the breadcrumbs as I'm going through the records. And it's just, thank you very much for actually.
You're welcome. I could actually tell you something else that would blow your mind, which I haven't told you, and I might as well while I'm on a roll. From all of this, which I've never shared outside of telling my wife the other day, really, and Matt. So when you jumped into the field, you spoke about ascended masters, and I keep hearing the term coming up. And one in particular you mentioned was Mary Magdalene. And within my field now, I'm like, I know nothing about her. I'm going to check her out. I don't know her history. I've never been brought up with any religion, anything. But the fact that it's been coming up in my awareness quite often, and through the processes of the energy I spoke about earlier, I'm very aware that there's something coming through more and more. So you mentioned Mary Magdalene. So this was I think we had the reading on the Wednesday or the Thursday, my Thursday. Now I'm in the workshops on the Saturday, a couple of days later. And I walk in, and there's a lady right sitting up the front wearing one of these, right? Now this is BioGeometry. This is imported from Egypt. And I saw she's wearing it because I'm wearing one. So I go and speak to her. I was like, oh, great to see you're wearing BioGeometry there. And she said, oh, yeah, I work with people. I'm a Reiki healer or whatever, and somebody recommended this BioGeometry to check it out. So then she orders the BioGeometry and finds out about us because we distribute the BioGeometry in Australia. So then she decides to come to the workshop. So I know she was only wearing this, right? And then at that point, she said, oh, yeah, I'm on quite a journey. And Mary Magdalene came into my vision this morning or something. And I was like, oh, okay. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, I've just heard Mary Magdalene again. Nobody's ever said anything about Mary Magdalene. Now I'm hearing it twice in 2 days. And then I go into the workshop. And then at the retreat at lunchtime, I have this energy that comes through that was quite mind-blowing. Now I'm thinking, that feels like a feminine energy. All right, is that so? Of course, but my mind is now starting to think, oh, that's just silly, thinking that could be Mary Magdalene. That's just ridiculous. And I left it be because I don't want to get in the way. It is what it is. I don't want to label it. So then the lady then comes in after lunch, and she comes straight up to me. So we did the meditation, and she said, you never guess what? I was like, what? She said, I go out to the park bench at lunchtime to sit down, and I'm closing my eyes, just integrating from the meditation you led. And I open my eyes and I look on the floor and I see this pendant just sitting between my feet. And she picks it up and she brings it and she shows me, and it's Mary Magdalene. And I'm like, no. Hey.
Wow.
Now, the next day we held another workshop in Newcastle from Sydney. The lady on the microphone shares to me, because we opened up a space to share in the afternoon, and she said, oh, Mary Magdalene came to me. And I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous. I'm thinking, so I've heard it Thursday, Saturday like that, and then Sunday. And we've held dozens and dozens. I've never heard a peep of Mary Magdalene. And then I have my energy with Sarah on Tuesday, my where I get to let go. And she's like, oh, bloody hell, this some interesting things going on here. She said, I feel I need to draw a card for you when you leave, and I'll text it to you. She texted me the card that she drew, Mary Magdalene.
Wow.
So that happened right through the weekend. And I was like, wow. Like I could feel my heart just racing, just sharing that story.
Yeah.
It was quite profound, absolutely profound. So I've just ordered a bunch of books on it.
That's amazing. You know, I love when we take the formless. I oftentimes do this after meditations when I do group meditations is I open it up for people to share. Because there's something so solidifying when we can take the experience of the formless and we have to put it into form, which in this case is word. And you just sharing that experience, like you said, you've shared it. This is the second time that you're sharing it. I feel it just anchoring, like this is in your cells now. It's like it's anchoring and it's solidified even more, even though you knew that it was true. But it just, when we say it out loud, we put the formless into form. This is how we start to dance with creation. It's amazing.
It's mind-blowing, isn't it? It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And it happens when you least expect it. And I think it had to happen for me that amount of times just to make sure I got the I got the message.
Right. And then just to ping it back, just to like keep the humanity in here. As I'm sharing that with you in the reading, there's a part, because I also work a little bit with this energy. There's a part of me that's like, am I infusing my own thing into Guy's reading, right? And then I pause and I'm like, no, this is for him, and so I share it. But it's just so interesting how we want the signs, and yet we want to be able to explain this, to unexplain them as being anything other than miraculous. We want the miracles, but then we want to undo the miracles. It's just crazy how we operate, hey? Wow.
I know. It is wild. Yeah. The validation right there.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm looking at the time. We've wrapped up nearly an hour on the podcast, which is just mind-blowing.
So I've actually meant to say it a few times in this conversation is your curiosity is a superpower that you have. And that's what keeps you able to be in the more expanded states, is because you stay curious. Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of my mantras. It's like we even say when things come up for people at the workshops, my mantra is just remember, just go, oh, isn't that interesting? Mm-hmm. As opposed to putting meaning onto it straight away, or it means this, it's that, it's this, and we just we resist even more to what's wanting to come through. But if we hold that awe, wonder, and curiosity says something, or if something happened that would normally trigger me and I can feel it rise and go, oh, that's interesting, then you're halfway there already, which is beautiful. Yeah. It's like, why carry it with you for the rest of the day?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful, Heather. Thank you so much. I loved our conversation today, and I've no doubt everyone today will be listening. And of course, just reach out to one of us if you've got questions. And
sounds great. Thanks for having me. Always an honor and a pleasure to be in your company. Yeah.
Thanks for lovely. Cheers.
Take care.